So we looked at an overview of steps required to create a knowledge assessment instrument. Now we're going to go into the detail of those steps, starting with step one, which I find that learners find the most challenging, and that is identifying the content to be assessed. I don't know what to put on my exam. So we're going to talk about that and talk about the considerations you can use to drive the selection of that content. But I'm going to start with this old adage from education at the top. If it's important enough to teach, it's important enough to test. And remember in my intro video, I talked about we're passionate about our teaching, but we're dedicated about our learners learning. So this is why it's very important for us to start with the step being really conscious about how we're selecting that content. So here's 4 considerations to think about. In selecting content, you want to start by looking at your outcomes and learning objectives, because one of the things about alignment, are you assessing those outcomes? So you look at those outcomes and say, what's the most important? How can I actually assess? Do I use a cognitive tool? Do I use an authentic assessment instrument? But you're looking at those objectives to determine what goes into this assessment. Then you're going to look at your learning plans to say what was actually taught in the course. Because this is one of the challenges we find too in some exam creations. People just choose the item put on the exam, don't know where it actually came from. Did you actually teach that? Or was it in the readings of the exam? Was it part of a homework assignment? How do you know that the learners actually were exposed to that information or that part of the curriculum? You want to ensure that you have got an adequate sample of course content. For instance, if you're teaching some 10 rules and you're only choosing to assess 5 of those rules, that's not an adequate sample of course content. So you want to make sure you've got, again, adequate content sample. And one of the most important pieces, and I can't emphasize this enough when it comes to assessments, because assessments sometimes are designed at the back end of curriculum design, that you're assessing at the same level as an intended curriculum. You're assessing at that objective level. Again, using Bloom's taxonomy to make sure you're in alignment. Now, these are just 4 considerations for you to get started on designing your knowledge assessment instrument. There's tons of information here on Moodle. Please take the time to read all the supporting documentation here, because instead of having a participant guide, this is where we put the content for you. And I'll be back.